What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Kyle here, and we're on site here with this massive building. In fact, the largest building that we will have ever constructed. And today's job is going to be building posts. So what we have to do in order to build them, because look over there at that pile, they're already here, they're already built. They come from a supplier. These are Richland. Ohio Timberland used to be the posts we always got, but they've gone out of business. The guy retired, he got old, and he didn't sell it to anybody. So we had to find another supplier. This is our first time using Richland, so we're gonna give them a go, and I'll let you guys know because you're always asking me where to find laminated columns. But back to today's job, that is taking those raw columns and cutting them down and marking them up for our specific building. And we've already got our brackets set, but what we need to do is go through with our laser, and we need to determine the exact elevation of each bracket. You may have seen this before, but if you're new to the channel, I'll take you through that process real quick, and then we'll get on to building our columns so that we can start the structure. So first thing I like to do is I like to just eyeball the bracket line, try to find what appears to be a tall bracket in the line. And that's just because if I find the tallest one, I know I'm never gonna have one taller than it, so I can always add a little bit of length to my column and I don't have to cut off the bottom. So, and that will all make sense hopefully here in a little bit. So I've got my laser set up. I've got it set at 0. You can hear that solid tone as I hold it nice and steady. So now when I go through to another bracket, say this one right here, okay, I get it level on my bubble, and this is reading. It says I need to bring up my level laser reader here 3/8 of an inch in order to be solid tone. What that means is that this bracket is 3/8 of an inch lower than this bracket. So if I were to call this 0, this would be plus 3/8. It means that when I find my 0 point on my story pole, which we'll do, we're going to have to add 3/8 of an inch to this. And when you're doing a bracket system like this, I find it easiest to kind of have your high point figured out and maybe even your low point, because when we set these, we always set the tubes to the laser as well, meaning that they're relatively perfect. But when you're pouring the concrete, when you're, you know, screeding off the top, when you're setting the bracket, and there can be some inconsistencies, and this is why we come back through and laser measure all of them to get a new benchmark for each column. I've done a whole video on all this, so I'm not gonna go super in depth, but I think you'll get the idea as you watch what we're doing here. So this is saying this bracket here is higher by 1/2 of an inch. But it's moving around because that laser's getting hit with the wind just enough. You know, with a site this big, this large, sometimes I'll go through and I'll think I know where I want the elevation, but then when I maybe start marking all the brackets, I want to change it. I want to adjust it because I find one bracket that kind of sets off my number, and then I'm like, let's change the elevation, because right now is the opportunity to do that. We have an idea where we want it, but you know, dialing it in perfect is what we're doing right now. And this is too big to start marking without kind of first going around the site. So I got my boy here just driving me around, and I'm just double checking because it's so big, it's really hard to eyeball the tallest bracket. So it looks like maybe that one over there is a little taller. Okay, we're still at the tallest. All right, let's go around. We have to go around to the other side. That one right there is just a little oddball. This row is like, when you look down, it looks so good. Walk it back, walk it back. Okay, that's always good news. It's a new set of columns. Sometimes they're milled differently. I got the brackets that were supposed to work because they do make different size brackets depending on what column you're using. Some are thicker than others. These are measuring like a 4.5. So our Ohio Timberlands used to be like 4 3/8, so we had a smaller bracket so that it wasn't so loose.
Get our marks.
Let's get our marks. I know this seems crazy, but I'm getting wind on my laser. What that means is you know, that laser sitting 100 and call it 150, 160 feet away from me. I got the Stabila 350, which is gonna be accurate at that range, but the problem is it's on the stand and just, it's pretty windy out. And if I get even the slightest of movement at 160, I might see a 16th or so over here in the laser bounce. So I'm just setting this up and I'm watching it to see, I'm just gonna let it set for just a few seconds and see what it kind of averages out to be. And it's going between 3/8, 3/8, 3/8, 3/8. I'm gonna say 3/8. So Cole, what you're gonna do, see how this arrow says go up 3/8? That means that this bracket is lower by 3/8 than what my 0 is.
Yeah.
So that means I need to do a plus or minus 3/8.
Plus.
Good. So you're gonna write plus, now you don't even have to, this is just all I want. Simple Simon plus 3/8. Okay. You're not in a hurry, so
yeah,
you just gotta read it,
legible.
Okay? And always on the same side of the bracket so that just for us, it's always, things are consistent.
Speaking of consistent.
0. Oh, put 0.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes there's always something right in the way of my laser, you know? It's like, you guys are in the way of my laser. Now, Cole, did I tell you that literally this is the most important part of the job?
Yeah.
So if we make a wrong mark here, what happens is we make the wrong column, we install the wrong column, then our truss gets installed at the wrong height. So it's very important. What I say is right, hopefully, and what you write is what I say. Not to put any pressure on you,
I'm only writing what you say, man.
But if we mess up, Greg will definitely never let me hear the end of it, and he'll say, why'd you do this without me? All right, plus 5/8.
Plus 5/8.
Plus 7/16. Yo! This one's low. 0. 5/16. Plus 1/16.
I'm locked in.
All right, so heel is 16. All right, buddy, that's perfect. So this is my story pole. I've done videos on story poles basically in a short description. This is the thing that we have all of our marks, where all of our girts are gonna go, where our truss heel height is, and we will use all the measurements we just set on those brackets with the laser. We'll use those as we transfer them to each column that they belong to, and we'll set the story pole up based on that number. If it's plus 1/4, we'll move it 1/4 inch to the one side. If it's minus a 16th, we'll move it to the other side. And you'll see as we get to it, but the story pole is something that will stay with us while we make all these columns, and it will be the one thing that stays consistent so that we always are laying out everything on the columns exactly the same. So this is kind of like our Bible for the job. It gives us all of our truths, and we'll make sure that we do the best possible that we can do. Now, this job does not have an interior. It's strictly a storage building, so we don't have to worry about any interior marks. But what I like to do, because I just feel like it's easier to see, oh, I don't want to get, it's just a square, right? Oh, that hurts. Yeah, it's titanium, it'll come off. All this talk of precision, and I'm using like a 1/4 inch thick marker to get my marks. One. Don't go too far because I gotta like roll them around and stuff. I can already tell we gotta move our tent. Plus 7/16, okay?
Plus 7/16 again?
This is my dimension from 0. But 0 is not the bottom of the column in a perfect situation, because the 0 is where the bottom of my grade board goes. The bottom of my grade board is the start of the building. 16 foot is the top of the wall, which means I need to have fudge room, and I need to have space down at the bottom of that bracket where I can set my grade board and then deal with any, inconsistencies in the site. We can't set the grade board right at 0. So what I always do, that is why I find the high point. So typically when we set, if you remember, when we set these sonotubes, +6 was finished floor. What that means is 0, I have a 0 column here, 2 inches up is in the perfect world what I had planned. So what that means is that these columns here that are +7/16, 5/16 are actually 2 7/16 to my 0 mark, okay? Now, after going through, after knowing that I have a +1 1/4, that almost everything is plus in this range, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna now make my 0 1 inch. What that means is that our smallest one is only gonna be 3/4, but that's perfectly okay. My main goal is that when they pour concrete inside the building, I don't want the concrete floor to be in the pier. I want it to set on the pier or above the pier on some gravel so that it floats. I don't want it to lock into that pier, and I also don't want it to be thin where that pier is, because then it's potentially weaker there. So that's why we always try to keep a minimum of 5 inches above the pier, which if I go to 1 inch and I have a -1/4, my bracket is 1/4, which will get me back to the 5 inches above that tallest pier. I think that's what I'm gonna do, which means every one of these I add 1 inch to it. What is it?
9/16.
16/1 and 9/16. Everything is based off of this day to day. Making these columns up is very important.
5/16.
1 and 5/16.
7/16.
Okay. All right. Now that we have that, come over on this side with me. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna square my heel height, and then we will use the story pole off of the heel, because that will be our consistent spot.
Which is the mark that I marked the square down there, right?
No. So that's what you marked down there was grade board, okay? Set it just like this. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set the story pole to my heel mark, okay? And then where all these marks are, that's where you're gonna put a crow's foot.
Does it matter what board I have to do it on?
And do it right next to it.
Three 3/16, 5/8, 5/16. Oh man, I'm getting hungry, guys.
Hey, hungry. My name's Kyle. I can't, the wind.
3/16.
Oh yeah, I heard 5/16. 1 1/4.
And 9/16.
1 and 9/16. Cole, you can be taught pretty well, man.
Thanks, dude.
I'd say you've caught on pretty quick. I mean, it's a pretty easy task, but
It's very repetitive.
very repetitive.
But I've been known to be pretty coachable. Some say, you know.
All right, guys, so we're back here this morning and we wrapped up all of our sidewall columns. So that just a bunch of consistent, repetitious work. But now we're moving on to our center wall. Our center wall columns are different. First off, they're long. These are 22-foot columns. The other ones were 18-foot, and that's because our truss has a raised bottom chord. So if you're looking at this picture here, what a raised bottom chord is, this is my outside wall, this is my inside wall, this is my other side of wall. I've got trusses that are gonna go like this, but the bottom is also raised. It's not gonna be flat across the bottom. So these center columns have to be taller. I have to know exactly where that's gonna be because this truss is a 2-piece truss. So we're gonna have 2 trusses that are called mono trusses that are gonna sit on this center ply, and I have to have that center ply exactly where I want it. And luckily my engineer gives me all that information, so I don't have to do too much math. So what we're gonna do is we've gotta basically figure out where the heel of that truss is gonna go. We'll put a center knockout block just like we did on the other ones. And then we'll have a little bit of interesting framing to do later that we'll share with you once we do this, but it's something I've never done, and we just made it up out of kind of the seat of my pants. No engineer drew this up. So the truss designer kind of told me what he would do, and we talked through it, and I think it's going to be just fine. Dude, what is going on here? I got bugs everywhere. This big old spider just flew in right here.
Did it really?
Yes, it's right here. It just flew in out of nowhere. So the one thing you'll notice about these columns also is we're not having to cut any angles up here. And in fact, we're just leaving this long because at the end of the day, our 2 trusses are gonna sit right in here together. And this will give us something to nail them together. And then we'll have to deal with the extra 10 feet that go up this way later. And we'll show you that. I think it'll be easier to see when we do it versus here on the ground talk about it too much. So let's just go ahead. Let's get all these columns made up, laid out, and then we're going to start cutting up our girts, which, Greg, you're probably going to be thankful to have help on that.
Yeah, that's going to be...
Hey, think about this. We got a guy to hold an end, a guy to mark 8 foot.
He's leaving us.
Oh, yeah, Cole's leaving. It's kind of nice. I got Greg back today. Greg, it's good to have you back for this.
Good to be back.
Yeah, are you sure?
I'm not excited about the weather, but it's good to be home.
Yeah, yep.
It's hard leaving Colorado, but you know, there's no place like home.
Wait, note to editor, that's where you put in that song, Home. You know what I'm talking about? There's just a lot of work, and having another set of hands. Cole's leaving us, so that kind of stinks. It just makes this so much faster, because look at that. I just finished that set. Now the boys got this all marked and ready to go, and I can start working on this set while Greg moves that set to the next spot and then loads up that spot with another set. Yeah.
Rough.
And I start working on this one, so it's all good. And Cole's gonna go to football practice. This wood is so hard. Even if the nail gun sets the nail, I still go ahead and try to hit most of them because it won't even draw the wood in together sometimes. The Paslode is not the problem. It doesn't really matter what nailer I use on this lumber. Ring shank 3 1/8 inch nails, it's gonna not drive everyone just because the Southern Yellow is so hard. All right. Always make sure you lift with your back, not your legs. That's where you get the most leverage. It's a helpful tip. Oh, you're good. We didn't end up needing that one because we ended up putting a doorway through the middle of the building. So that's the post we decided to get rid of. So we have to mark our 16-foot heel because that's how our story pole is set up. But then the new heel of the truss is at 1911 plus 1 and what?
1/8.
1 and 1/8. So I got to make 2 marks on this. This is my heel block mark, and then this is so we can set our story pole on.
Minus a 16th.
For consistency. Minus a 16th.
Minus a 16th. And then this one is going to be 3/16. Whoa, that's a bad mark. Let me fix that.
Come on, dude. I'm gonna bring Cole back. Always a little bit of a struggle. All right, guys, that wraps up the columns. Greg's gonna move this last set down the line. You can kind of see we have piles staggered everywhere, and that was because I didn't want to necessarily leave the posts laying in the bracket on the ground, collecting more moisture, not being on a level surface. You know, I've seen long columns warp over time. Now, we're not talking about months, we're just talking about a couple days, but I just kind of like to leave them where they're at. Like we got this pile over here. They're set on some stickers. That's what I call them, just little pieces of wood, and they're nice and flat. So they'll stay like that. We're gonna go ahead and go start making up all of our wall girts. It's 19 end-to-end 16 footers for the length of the building, and we have to go 6 high times 3 sets of walls. So I don't know what that math is off the top of my head. 6 times 19, that would be 114 times 3. So there you go, 342, if my math is correct, wall girts that we gotta go cut up. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it's gonna take Greg and I some time. So let's go set ourselves up and move on to the next task. I don't know what's gonna happen. Oh, got lucky on that one.
What were you scared of?
So I know I said I kind of sort through my lumber. What I look for wall girts specifically, like if I've got a board and it has what I would call like a crown. So when you're checking floor joists, rafters, you want to crown and put the crown up so that, you know, the weight kind of settles in and it's flat, right? This is what I'll do for it. I'll show you a little picture of what I'm talking about for those of you that don't know. This is my post, okay? Boom, there's my post. I put a gird on here, right? I put another gird on here. Okay, so now if I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna draw it a little bigger, okay? This has grain in this wood. Depending on which way you line that grain up, this board will either, it's really hard, it will either cup like this, or if I draw another one, it will cup like this on that post. This is what you want. Why? Because when you put your steel here, and I put a screw right here, it's gonna touch that high point and it's gonna be good. What's it gonna do here? I bet you're probably figuring it out. It's got a little bit of a recession in here. When I screw this, it's gonna suck this in tight and it's gonna give me oil can on these points. So if you're really anal, if you really want your metal to look good, if you're doing a dark color, I recommend checking the cup of your boards. Greg thinks I'm crazy sometimes. This color scheme right here is not as important. Light colors, you just aren't gonna see it. If it was gonna be a green building with like a light colored wainscot, I would spend more time looking specifically at a board and saying, okay, yeah, this needs to be the top. So we're gonna make sure this is the top because this is gonna end up cupping down. You can see the grain, it's gonna flatten out and cup that way. So it's crazy, I get it, it's just a post frame, but there's nothing worse than doing all this work and looking back and being like, ugh, look at those screws, man. They kind of look kind of crappy. And this is one of the things you can do to avoid it. Hopefully that helps you guys when you're getting lumber. The girts, you got a lot of room to fudge on your lumber, but twist, you don't want twist in the board and you don't want any sudden movements. You want it to just be a nice flowing board. This whole pile doesn't even get one wall done. That's kind of crazy actually, huh? Where's Cole when you need him? I don't know what he would be doing, but it'd be something that involved lifting, you know?
Yep.
So one of the things I'll also share with you guys that we've learned through a lot of experience is when you're cutting girts, right? These are 16 foot. I gotta do 19 of them in a row. Take the line. And what I mean by that is I mark 16 foot, but then when I go ahead and cut, I cut through that whole like crow's foot, knowing that when I start stacking these end to end, there's gonna be a little bit of growth because I'm never gonna get them perfectly tight because we're not cutting the end down there. That's a factory end, and you know, things are just never perfect. So we found that if we cut the line, we have our best chance of success. And get yourself one of these HKC style saws, dude. It's literally just makes it so easy. I don't have to square anything up. I just put it right on the mark. And these two little nubs down here, they keep my saw square to the board. So all I have to do is just line up the edge. Oh, you can't have a track saw on a framing site. Watch me. All right. There's the first pallet of, or bunk I should say, of 2x6s. Like I said, This bunk doesn't even cover the entire wall. So I think we got 94 here. We need to get another 20? Another 20 onto this pile, and that'll do this whole wall. So listen, there ain't a whole lot of content here to show cutting these up. Like I said, we're gonna be selective on our boards to a small degree to make sure they don't, you know, fit into this really bad category of crap wood. As long as it's good enough for the wall girt, we save our really good stuff, and our pickiness comes out when we get to fascias, things like that really matter. But keep it going, get into laying them all out, and that's really, I think, when this thing is gonna look crazy, is when we get all these columns laid out and our girts on the columns. It's gonna be huge. All right, now that we got these all laid out, Greg's running the tape measure all the way across. We're gonna make sure that all of our tops are spaced appropriately off the wall. And then what I'm doing is setting all of my posts in the bracket to my grade line. That way they're as straight as these post lines are. So we don't wanna just randomly kind of lay them down. We're gonna make sure that this was all shot with the laser. We've got our grade mark on our column. We line that up with the face of the bracket, and then we make sure that the tops are in line and the right dimension off the end wall. In essence, that makes sure that this wall is as square as possible. So when we construct it, it is also nice and square. My thought is if we can get this all laid out and maybe even nailed up together before lunch, that would be epic. We had a late start today. We had some major thunderstorms roll through. Then we went after the telehandler. We went after the big scissor lift, which I'm using as a nice GoPro mount. And now we kind of got everything here ready to go. So hopefully we have a good rest of the day with no more crappy weather. Oh yeah, buddy, these are heavy. This is where you get to handle all this material. No matter how much machinery you got, we still got to put them in, we still got to lift them around, we still got to move them to the marks. This is what keeps you young and limber. Ugh.
Is it what keeps you young?
Yeah, this is what keeps you young,
or is this
man.
what ages you?
No. What ages you is doing nothing and being lazy and sitting in an office.
Oh.
That's why we look so good compared to our counterparts, you know, in the real world. So we measured our first column off the end wall. We centered it right where we got to be. Now we're hooking the tape measure on the first one, and then we will go down the line, and I'm going to line these all up 8 foot on center. So move it to 24, move it to 32. This is so when we build this wall, we have our best chance of being square. So when we stand it up and set it in, we're not racking all of our connections because it was already built as it's going to sit. Yeah, these are pretty good, Greg, for the most part. 9. Come on, Greg.
My bad.
Jeez. Posts laid out, they're where we want them. Now we've got 114 girts to lay out. Good thing we didn't work out this morning, Greg. Ugh. This is probably like the worst part of framing right here, man. Oh, this is a heavy one. Ugh. Time to move that skid loader, maybe? Short 2 bays. Well, no, 1 bay and 1. 4 boards.
Son of a gun! Why didn't you drive the skid loader over there? We could have carried him over.
Woo! Let's go, dude. Okay, this is only one of 3 walls like this, buddy. We need coal here. That's what'll help us.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. I don't care what you say. All right, so we got the jumbo nailer. I think I figured 20-some hundred nails is what it's gonna take. That's at 2 nails on every connection plus a third in the middle, because I don't like to do 3 nails too often on like the joint.
Look at that wall, dude. That's a big wall.
Hey Cole, good timing. Your job is gonna be to help Greg push and pull and hold on to some strips of nails, okay? Come on, buddy. Okay, we don't do 2 ears. That way we can get the truss in there and then we'll nail it together. Okay, next one. Now when we put that truss in there and bolt it together, it will keep this connection nice and tight. If we go the opposite way and we put that truss in there, it'll spread it open. And then our building will get too big. Yep. Yeah, it'll work. More. We're 3/8 of an inch long.
I was gonna say quarter. Yes. It's a lot of wall.
To put that into perspective, that wall there's more nailing in this one wall than all the walls on RRHQ. And this is just one of 3 walls. And then we have the 200-foot end walls, which it's not a big deal. But look at that, it looks good, dude. All right, guys, I don't know about you, but if you aren't tired like I am, then you clearly weren't doing much, because that was a ton of work to lay all these columns out, to lay all the girts out. Cole showed up just as we were getting done with that, but that's okay, because then he helped us get all these columns in place so we could get it all nailed. We got the first wall done. This is more linear footage than RRHQ was entirely, like the whole building. So there's a lot here, and I don't know if it really, comes across in the video. Maybe it does, but next video we're gonna start standing this. So if you guys want to see how this goes, we got 2 machines. We're gonna try to do like 80 feet or so at a time, so we don't have to splice a ton. Then make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed this video, and come back for the next one where we're gonna go ahead and stand these walls up. So you guys take it easy. I'm gonna go take a drink of water and see you on the next one.